Picture the ocean, vast, inescapable, surrounding every shore. Now imagine the god who controls it. In Greek mythology, that god was Poseidon, second only to Zeus in power, worshipped across the ancient world, essential for survival. Modern stories portray him as moody but majestic, Percy Jackson's caring father, the inspiration for Aquaman. But the ancient sources, they tell a very different story. This is Mythology Uncensored. If you know anything about Poseidon, you probably know the basics. God of the sea, earthquakes, and horses, carries a trident, controls storms. He's one of the big three, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon brothers, who divided the cosmos after overthrowing the Titans. Zeus got the sky, Hades the underworld, Poseidon the oceans. Ancient Greeks worshipped him extensively. If you depended on fishing, trade, or travel by sea, you made offerings to Poseidon. Coastal cities built him massive temples. Sailors prayed for his favor before every voyage. The mythology around him feels dramatic. He's temperamental, causes earthquakes when angry, floods cities that disrespect him, creates sea monsters. But also protective, right? If you honor him, he'll calm the waters, grant safe passage, provide abundant fish. Modern portrayals lean into this. He's powerful but ultimately fair, dangerous if provoked, but reasonable. Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series made him a caring father figure. Disney portrayed him as regal and commanding. There's something appealing about that version, the raw power of nature, personified. Respect the ocean, and the ocean god respects you. Here's the thing. The ancient sources, the actual Greek and Roman texts we still have, describe Poseidon very differently. Not as a temperamental, but ultimately just authority figure, as a serial predator. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean the sources document a pattern across centuries, across the entire Greek world, of Poseidon using his divine power to assault mortal women. Ovid documented it. Apollodorus documented it. Homer referenced it. Pausanias described cult sites that commemorated the victims. This isn't hidden knowledge. This isn't me reading between the lines. The sources are explicit, available to anyone. We just choose not to talk about them. So let's talk about them. Let's start with the story you might actually know, but probably not the way it was originally told. Medusa. Today, she's famous as the monster with snake hair who turns people to stone, the creature Perseus defeated, a symbol of female rage, or danger, or monstrosity, depending on who's retelling it. But Ovid's Metamorphoses tells us what happened before the snakes. Medusa was a young woman, a priestess in Athena's temple. By some accounts, she'd taken a vow of celibacy as part of her service. Poseidon saw her in the temple, and he assaulted her, right there, inside Athena's sacred space. Think about that for a moment. A god violated a priestess inside the temple of another god. The ultimate abuse of religious authority and sacred space is less than #2. 0 hash is greater than, and what happened next? Athena, goddess of wisdom, warfare, and justice, punished Medusa. Not Poseidon, Medusa. She transformed the victim into a monster, replaced her hair with snakes, made her face so horrifying that anyone who looked at her would turn to stone. The woman who was assaulted in a temple became a creature that had to be hunted down and killed. Let that sink in. The victim became the monster. And Poseidon faced no consequences whatsoever. If you think divine status offered protection, let me tell you about Demeter. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, one of the major Olympians, also Poseidon's sister. According to Apollodorus and other sources, Poseidon pursued her. She didn't want his attention, so she ran. And here's where it gets worse. Demeter, desperate to escape, transformed herself into a mare and hid among a herd of horses. Think about the desperation in that act. A goddess, transforming herself, hiding among animals, hoping he wouldn't find her. Poseidon transformed into a stallion and hunted her down anyway. The assault resulted in 2 children. One was Arion, a divine horse. The other was a daughter named Despoina. And here's a detail that breaks my heart. Despoina isn't really a name. It means mistress, or the nameless one. Even in mythology, this child's identity was erased. After this, Demeter was worshipped in some regions as Demeter Erinys, Demeter the Furious. Pausanias describes cult sites dedicated to this aspect of her. The ancient Greeks remembered her rage. But here's what gets me. Even a goddess couldn't escape him. Even divine power, even transformation, even running as far as she could. She couldn't get away. Poseidon had a pattern, and transformation was central to it. Sometimes he transformed himself to deceive his victims. Sometimes he transformed them afterward as punishment, or what the myths frame as gifts. Take Caenis. She was a young woman in Thessaly. Poseidon assaulted her, and afterward, according to Ovid, he offered her a wish. She asked to be transformed into an invulnerable man, so she would never be vulnerable to assault again. The myth frames this as Poseidon granting a generous gift. She became Caeneus, a mighty warrior, invulnerable to weapons. But read that again. The only way she could be safe was to stop being a woman. That's not a gift. That's a trauma response. That's a victim so desperate for safety that she asked to fundamentally change who she was. Or consider Tyro. Homer's Odyssey tells her story. She loved the river god Enopeus. Poseidon noticed, so he disguised himself as Enopeus, approached her, and assaulted her. He used transformation as a weapon of deception. She thought she was with someone she trusted. It's the ancient equivalent of modern predators who use authority, costumes, or credentials to gain access to victims. Here's what really reveals the pattern. This wasn't one story, one myth, one regional variation. Poseidon's assaults were documented across the entire Greek world. Amymone in Argos, Aethra in Athens, Alcyone in Thessaly, Medusa in Athena's temple, location disputed but widely known, Demeter in Arcadia. Different authors, different centuries, different regions, all documenting the same pattern. And remember, Poseidon's domain was the sea, which meant anywhere near water, anywhere near a coast, anywhere near a spring or river that connected to the ocean. Basically, everywhere. When your domain is the ocean inescapable, surrounding every shore, you don't need to ask permission. You just take. Ancient Greeks knew this. They documented it extensively. They built cult sites commemorating victims. They recorded the stories in epic poetry, in genealogies, in local histories. This wasn't secret. This was their mythology. So why don't we know these stories? Here's something important. The ancient Greeks didn't glorify this behavior. Yes, Poseidon was a major god. Yes, they worshipped him because they had to, because he controlled forces essential to survival. But when they told these stories, they weren't celebrating him, they were documenting. Ovid writes Medusa's transformation with tragic weight. Apollodorus records Demeter's fury as a permanent aspect of her worship. Pausanias describes cult sites where victims were remembered. These weren't triumphal narratives, they were records, often critical ones. Ancient Greek religion was complicated. They worshipped gods. They also feared, resented, and criticized. The gods had power, but that didn't make them good. Modern readers sometimes struggle with this. We want heroes and villains. We want the gods to be either worthy of worship or not. But the Greeks understood something we've forgotten. Power and morality aren't the same thing. You can worship a god because he controls the sea and still document that he's a predator. They did both. We're the ones who sanitized it. Let's talk about why this pattern matters today. Because it's not just ancient mythology. The dynamics Poseidon represents, they still exist. Think about environments where one person has absolute authority and victims can't leave. Ship captains on merchant vessels, months at sea, crew members with nowhere to go, authority figure with complete control. The maritime industry has documented ongoing problems with assault and abuse. The International Transport Workers Federation reports cases regularly. Victims are literally surrounded by ocean, just like Poseidon's domain. Or consider institutional authority, religious leaders, athletic coaches, academic supervisors. Positions where the authority figure controls access to something essential: spiritual community, athletic career, academic advancement. Where leaving means losing everything you've worked for. Where the authority figure can isolate you from support. Where the institution often protects the abuser instead of the victim. Sound familiar? Poseidon controlled the ocean, essential for trade, food, travel. Modern predators control access to careers, education, communities. Same pattern, different era. And then there's what happened to the victims. Medusa, transformed into a monster, blamed for her own assault, hunted down, killed. Today, we call it victim blaming. We document how assault victims are treated as damaged, dangerous, or complicit. How often do victims have to change jobs, cities, identities, while perpetrators keep their positions? How often does society transform the victim into a cautionary tale instead of holding the perpetrator accountable? Caeneus, forced to become someone else entirely to feel safe. Modern victims report the same thing: fundamental disruption of identity, having to rebuild yourself, losing who you were before. The ancient myths documented this. We're still living it. So here's my question. Why do modern retellings erase this? We have the sources. Ovid's Metamorphoses is one of the most widely available ancient texts. The Odyssey is taught in schools. Apollodorus' library is online for free. This isn't hidden knowledge. This isn't me uncovering secrets. This is us choosing which parts of mythology to remember. We'll teach kids about Poseidon's trident and his underwater palace. We'll make movies about him as a wise, powerful mentor. But we won't mention Medusa before the snakes. We won't talk about Demeter transforming into a mare to escape. We won't acknowledge the pattern ancient sources documented across centuries. Why? Maybe because it's uncomfortable. Because we want mythology to be fun, escapist, inspiring. Maybe because acknowledging ancient patterns means confronting modern ones. Or maybe because we're still not great at believing victims, even when they're literally written into thousand-year-old texts. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The ancient Greeks documented Poseidon's pattern of assault extensively. Multiple authors, multiple centuries, multiple regions. They documented the victims Medusa, Demeter, Caenis, Tyro, Amymone, Aethra, and more. They documented the methods, transformation, deception, use of divine power to overcome resistance. They documented the consequences victims punished, transformed, erased. And they built cult sites, shrines to Demeter the Furious, places where ancient Greeks remembered what had been done. We have access to all of this right now. Anyone can read these sources. And yet modern adaptations make Poseidon a hero, a mentor, Percy Jackson's caring dad. That's not creative interpretation, that's erasure. So here's what I'm asking. Read the sources. They're available. They're translated. They're waiting. When you see mythology adapted in books, movies, games, ask what's being left out. Ask why. Recognize the patterns, ancient and modern. Authority plus isolation equals vulnerability. Victims transformed while perpetrators face no consequences. And stop sanitizing predatory behavior just because it's mythological. The ancient Greeks didn't hide this. They documented it. They remembered the victims. We should do the same. This has been Mythology Uncensored. We're not here to sanitize the stories. We're here to read what the ancient sources actually say and ask why modern culture chooses to forget. The myths are darker than you learned in school. The gods more monstrous. The patterns more familiar. Next time, we'll be looking at another Olympian with a documented history. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And in the meantime, read the sources. They're waiting for you.